Cathedral Quarter has a dark, unspoken past that many would prefer to leave buried. Some of Belfast's oldest buildings and thoroughfares lie here. Named after St Anne's Cathedral, which lies at its heart, Cathedral Quarter was once the centre of Belfast's trade and warehousing district. It was built on the sweat and backbones of linen workers and shipbuilders who helped to make this part of the city thrive, then were left to wallow in their own poverty-stricken lives once the industry owners were done with them. Today, artists and photographers travel through Cathedral Quarter for its beauty. Tourists come for the culture, but of course this all came after. After the immigrants came, after they died. After the rundown area behind St Anne's, known as Half Bap, has long since disappeared. For 100 years the Half Bap stood. It was literally forgotten and wasted land. In the 1890s, a redevelopment of Belfast streets was underway. The Planning Commission did not fully consider how they could demolish old streets while building new ones. What resulted was a considerable piece of wasted ground, which became Belfast's first roundabout. The locals decided its shape was exactly like that of baker Barney Hughes' famous Half Bap bread, and so the land was so named. It was in this area, near the dilapidated Little Patrick Street and its neighbouring blocks, that the Italian immigrants settled. It was close to the Belfast docks, which was their port of entry into Belfast, and the accommodations, though unsavoury, were also inexpensive. The area was dubbed Little Italy, and it was populated with people who were not afraid of hard work. Unfortunately for them, there were more than enough shop owners willing to exploit just such a people. These immigrants lived and died for their families, but some of them died much harsher deaths than others. Some of them still walk the streets they once lived on, unable to move away from the place they called home for so long, or the depravity they had grown so accustomed to. These are their stories, as told by the people who have encountered them. Most of these stories come from residents of the area who were just going about a normal day, when something unexpected happened which changed them forever. Story 2. The Ghostly Encounter on Hill Street. I work at a well-known hotel in the Belfast Cathedral Quarter. I never believed in ghosts growing up, but I saw something once that changed my mind. It has given me nightmares every night since it happened. I was finishing my shift at the hotel. It was in the early hours of Saturday morning. The sun had just started to peek over the horizon and I was dead tired. I hated working night shifts, but they paid better than the day ones. I left the hotel and walked toward St Anne's Square car park, anxious to get home. The cobbled stones of Hill Street make an odd, hollow sound whenever you walk on them. In one way, it's sort of comforting, because the sound is always the same. In another way, it always gives me the shivers, because the sounds seem far away somehow, even though they're coming from right beneath your feet. I walked past the Har Bar, which is always popular on a Saturday night. Being just after dawn, however, it was now deserted. I was alone on the street, at least I'd thought I was. Suddenly, I noticed a bearded man dressed all in black at the junction of Gordon Street. It seemed like he'd appeared out of nowhere. I hadn't seen him when I was walking up the street, though, to be fair, I had been sort of lost in my sleep-deprived thoughts. He was standing in the distance, leaning against the wall and smoking a cigarette. Something about him didn't seem right, but I couldn't place my finger on exactly what it was. As I walked past him, he looked over at me and I noticed he was wearing some sort of costume. I would compare what he was wearing to like something you would see on Game of Thrones. He had a scraggly beard and strange eyes. For some reason, I couldn't take my eyes off him. His skin was oddly pale. His eyes were a dark brown, almost black, with flecks of gold filigree shining in them like he was being lit from within. As I stared at him, he threw his cigarette on the ground and walked off down Gordon Street. I watched in shock as he disappeared into the wall besides the Oya Music Center. I cannot explain it in another way, he just seemed to merge into the wall and vanish. After that, I'd look for him every time I left work after working a night shift, but I've never seen him again. Story 3. The Apparition of St. Anne's Cathedral. St. Anne's Cathedral is where I worship each Sunday. I just love the architecture of the building and the history of the place. One day, when I was leaving after Mass, I decided not to go home right away. It was a nice day outside. Winter had just ended, and I hadn't felt a fresh breeze on my face in so long that I wanted to make it last. So I decided to walk around Cathedral Quarter and see what vendors were out. There was nothing odd about the day. There were lots of people around, and I enjoyed walking amongst them, looking into the shops and so forth. I rounded the corner behind St. Anne's that used to be Half Bap. I was on Talbot Street, just walking around and soaking in the sun, when I heard someone calling me. Teresa. I turned to see who it was, thinking one of my friends from church had spotted me and wanted to chat a little. The stones I was walking on suddenly felt unsteady beneath my feet. The air around me felt lighter, as if it could lift me off the ground like I was a balloon. I couldn't feel the sun on my face anymore, only a damp mist. I was 50 at the time, and my first thought was that I was having a heart attack. I remember this thick beam of sunlight shining down onto the stone street, reflecting off of it and burning my eyes. Out of that light, a man stepped forward. He had a thick, brown mustache and wore a white apron. He was about 70 or so, and he smiled at me with bad teeth and wrinkled skin. Teresa, he said again, and I realized he had a thick, Italian accent. I don't know how I had missed it the first time. It was unmistakable. Teresa, are you hungry? He asked, holding out a bright, shiny orange. How do you know my name? I could feel my heart pounding in my chest and began searching around me for somewhere to sit. I don't feel very well, I told him. There was no one else around, and I was starting to think I needed help. Can you call a doctor? Doctor, you don't need a doctor, Teresa, he said again, still holding the orange. How do you know my name? I asked, a little sharper this time. Something wasn't right with this man. Something wasn't right with me. To my right, I could see other, more distant streams of sunlight that didn't have the strange artificial quality the light where I stood had. The bricks there looked more solid, even the air looked different. It was like I was looking through some strange type of bubble and seeing the real world beyond the layer of film that was hiding me. I began to walk, wanting to escape my bubble. If you leave now, things will only get worse. They come for you at night, you know. The devils all like night the best. Then the man began to cackle. It scared me so badly I began to run. I almost tripped, but I didn't stop running until I felt the sun on my skin again. When I turned around, the man was gone. The orange he'd held lay on the ground, rotted out. I've never been able to explain what happened to me that day, and I still have no idea what the man meant when he said, "Things will only get worse." It sounded like some kind of threat to me at the time, and it makes me wonder how bad things would have gotten if I had stayed. Story 4. The Har Bar Haunting. The Har Bar, a popular spot in the Cathedral Quarter, has always been known for its lively atmosphere and rich history. However, beneath the jovial surface lies a darker tale that not many are aware of. Years ago, before it became the trendy bar it is today, the building housed a small inn that catered to sailors and dock workers. Among these visitors was a young sailor named Thomas, who had just returned from a grueling voyage. Thomas was a charismatic figure, always ready with a story or a song. He was seen by many enjoying his drinks and regaling patrons with tales of the sea. That night, he retired to his room upstairs, but he never left the building again. The next morning, his lifeless body was found hanging from the rafters. It was ruled a suicide, but whispers of foul play circulated among the patrons. Some believed Thomas had uncovered a smuggling ring operating out of the inn, and that his death was no accident. Today, staff and patrons of the Har Bar have reported strange occurrences. Glasses fall off shelves, unexplained cold drafts sweep through the room, and some have even claimed to see a shadowy figure with a noose around his neck in the upper floors. One particularly eerie incident involved a group of friends celebrating a birthday. As they took a photo, they later noticed a ghostly figure standing in the background, staring directly at the camera with hollow eyes. One night, a bartender named Sean was closing up when he heard a soft, mournful humming coming from the corner of the room. He turned to see a transparent figure of a man, dressed in old sailor's attire, swaying gently as if suspended. The figure vanished before his eyes, leaving Sean in a state of shock. Since then, Sean avoids the bar's upper floors and always ensures he's not alone when closing up. Other staff members have reported seeing flickering lights, hearing footsteps when no one is there, and even feeling an unseen presence watching them. Regulars of the bar have come to accept these occurrences as part of its charm, with many believing that Thomas's spirit remains to protect them from the dark secrets still lurking in the shadows. Some even leave a drink at the bar for Thomas, hoping to appease his restless spirit. Despite these eerie events, the Har Bar continues to thrive, drawing in visitors who are both intrigued and terrified by the stories of its haunted past. Story 5. The Ghost of the Merchant Hotel. The Merchant Hotel, once the headquarters of the Ulster Bank, is an opulent establishment known for its luxurious accommodations and rich history. But amidst the grandeur, there are stories of a lingering presence that haunts the hallways. In the late 1800s, a young woman named Margaret worked as a secretary in the bank. She was deeply in love with one of the bank clerks, Robert. Their romance was a well-kept secret due to the strict social norms of the time. Margaret and Robert would often meet in the hidden corners of the building, exchanging love letters and stolen glances. Their love was intense, but fraught with the fear of discovery. One tragic evening, Margaret discovered that Robert had been promised to another woman by his family, a match that would elevate his social status. Heartbroken and feeling betrayed, Margaret climbed to the rooftop and jumped to her death. Guests and staff of the Merchant Hotel have since reported seeing a woman in a white dress wandering the halls, especially near the old bank offices. One guest, Mrs. Thompson, recounted her experience during her stay in room 203. She was awakened in the middle of the night by the feeling of someone sitting at the foot of her bed. When she turned on the light, she saw a young woman with tear-streaked cheeks and a sorrowful expression. The figure whispered, "Where is he?" before disappearing into thin air. Another eerie encounter involved a night guard, James, who was making his rounds when he saw a woman in an old-fashioned dress standing by one of the large windows in the lobby. Thinking she was a guest in need of assistance, he approached her. But as he got closer, she faded away, leaving behind a cold chill in the air. James later learned about Margaret's tragic story from an old colleague, and he believes that her spirit is still searching for Robert, unable to move on from her heartbreak. One evening, a wedding party was held at the Merchant Hotel. As the celebration reached its peak, the bride went to the restroom to fix her makeup. While alone, she saw a reflection in the mirror that wasn't her own. The reflection showed a woman in a white dress with dark, hollow eyes and a look of despair. Terrified, the bride ran out, her screams echoing through the halls. The guests, puzzled and concerned, tried to console her, but she was convinced that she had seen a ghost. Over the years, many guests have reported similar sightings and experiences. Some have seen doors opening and closing on their own, heard faint sobbing in the dead of night, and felt sudden drops in temperature. The hotel's management has tried to keep these stories quiet, fearing they might scare away potential guests, but the tales of Margaret's ghost have become part of the hotel's mystique. The Merchant Hotel continues to welcome guests from all over the world, but those who know its history always keep an eye out for the sorrowful spirit of Margaret, still searching for her lost love. Some believe that Margaret's spirit is not malevolent, but rather a tragic reminder of the intense love and deep betrayal she felt. Guests often leave flowers or notes in her memory, hoping to bring her some peace. Yet, Margaret's restless spirit remains, a haunting presence in the heart of Belfast's most luxurious hotel.